Hello, shalom, salam, and hola. Welcome to the Hot Jewish Podcast. I'm Michael, aka Hot Jewish Energy. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Hot Jewish Energy, at Hot Jewish Podcast, at Michael T. Valdes with an S at the end, and at Hot Jewish Short King. Welcome to the episode, everybody. Today is my last guest of season 1. Yay! Very, very excited. The season finale is going to be just me because I wanted all my seasons to start with me and end with me. So I know that may sound a little bit weird and a little bit selfish, but I wanted to make sure that I gave myself the time that I needed to just be here with me for the beginning and the end. So yeah, I'm really, really shocked. The season has just been I couldn't have asked for it to go any better. It's truly been a blessing. I'm grateful to be able to do this, to be able to do what I do. I know that's saying a lot, but I why am I tearing up? I it's crazy. It's crazy that I get to be proud of who I am. I get to share in that pride with other people that I love seeing and watching and following and that inspire me, people that make me a better advocate, a better person. I'm fortunate. And it wouldn't be if it weren't for you guys, for the people that support me and the people that vibe with me, the people that criticize me, because I always ask for criticism, because how am I supposed to become better if I'm not criticized? So I thank you. I thank the haters too. Hell, the haters give me content. They give me content. That's the little part of it, but they keep me on my feet. They make me a wiser person, and they root me more in what I believe in. Enough about me. Today's episode, we're gonna get right into it. I have the phenomenal Ben M. Freeman coming in today. If you guys don't know who Ben is an author. He is an activist. He is from the UK. He wrote two beautiful books that we're going to talk about in this episode. One is called Jewish Pride. This was his first book that he wrote in 2021. And then Reclaiming Our Story, which just came out at the end of last year. You can also buy these on Amazon. I recommend that you buy them. Ben is just great. And to the one follower that answered guessing if Ben M. Freeman is going to be on the podcast, you are the reason he's here. You're the reason we got in touch. You're the reason that he is going to be here today. So thank you. I cannot remember who it was, but if you are watching, Ben M. Freeman is here because of you, and also because he is just phenomenal. And it was a great suggestion. I'm very excited to have him here. He is a queer Jew like myself, very, very fruity, which we love. Yeah, we're gonna get right into it after this very, very short break. You are watching the Hot Jewish Podcast with special guest Ben M. Freeman. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am here with Ben M. Freeman. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. And what, as everyone can kind of hear, he has a little bit of an accent. Where are you currently? Where are you from?
So I do have an accent, although I want to say you also have an accent, Michael.
I
Uh,
do, but
you do,
but
of
for
course you do.
My American Jews and audience, that
Yeah,
it could sound a little bit foreign, but
yeah.
indulge everybody.
So I'm currently living in London,
Uh,
and I'm from Scotland. I'm from the biggest city in Scotland, which is called Glasgow, and it was a very nice place to grow up. There was about 5,000 Jews in the whole country, so very small community. But as I said, now I'm living in London in the big city.
growing up in Scotland, you mentioned that there were about 5,000 Jews in the area. So how was it incorporating your Jewishness into your life? Did you find it challenging at times? What was it like growing up at home?
You know, it's really interesting because Glasgow, the Scottish Jewish community, as I said, is about 5,000. I think it's even less now, to be honest. It's a very, very small community. I didn't find it challenging But then I was a child. I wonder if my parents did. And listen, they had to make enormous amounts of efforts to make sure that we grew up with a strong Jewish identity. There were a couple of Jewish areas. We lived in a Jewish neighborhood. There were 5 Jewish families on my street, which is kind of crazy considering, again, the fact there was 5,000 in the whole country. But I went to a Jewish elementary school. The only Jewish school in the country was an elementary school, so I went there. It's kind of amazing because even though there were so few of us, we were a very strong community, very proud, very Zionist, and we all socialized together. So people I'm still close with today are the people I met in kindergarten, or people who also grew up in Glasgow. I mean, it's about 5:30 p.m. in London right now, and this earlier today I had lunch with another Glasgow boy who now lives in London. So there is a special connection that we have with one another because it was such a specific experience. But I loved it. It felt very empowering. It felt very exciting. It was very cool to be involved. I worked for the Jewish community, and I actually met my old chairman a couple of weeks ago for coffee. And when I was a kid, it was cool to be involved in the community. Like everyone was. Like we all did the leadership training programs. We all became madrachim. It was really cool. So it didn't feel challenging for me. I think again for my parents it might have been different. But I did feel different to those around me, like those being the non-Jewish people at the non-Jewish high school that I went to. Because as I said, there was only one elementary school, one Jewish school in the whole country was the elementary school. So the high school I went to was a non-Jewish high school, and I did feel different to the people around me. And that's not necessarily good or bad, right? I didn't feel better, I didn't feel worse. I just felt different. I knew that I was part of a different community. I knew that at home we had 2 sets of cutlery, we
Oh
had
wow.
mezuzah on the wall, I went to synagogue. Because I think the British Jewish community is probably more small c conservative than the American, so observance is not uncommon. But yeah, like it was great. It was a great experience actually.
So it wasn't much of a cultural shock for you when you made that transition from being, I mean, what we call yeshiva. You guys call it yeshiva there too.
Yeah, although it wasn't a yeshiva, it was like a modern Orthodox elementary school. So the I guess Lubavitch were involved to an extent. Like they would come in and help us shake the lulav and etrog,
Hmm.
but it wasn't a Haredi school. It was like modern Orthodox.
Okay. It seems like you didn't really have that big of a cultural shock going in because you were already surrounded. You were already
Yeah,
pretty much in a minority within a minority because Jews are a minority to begin with, and now you're a portion of a small population of Jews in Scotland. So
yeah.
you were kind of just accustomed to everything. It wasn't really much of a shock to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I think you're right to an extent. Although I will say that I grew up in like a bit of a Jewish bubble, which I know is kind of
Mm.
amazing for people from maybe New York or LA to hear because those bubbles are so much bigger. But I did grow up in kind of a Jewish bubble, and I remember not really understanding like non-Jewish identity. I remember going to high school and not really understanding that you could just be secular, like a
Uh,
secular white Scottish person. I was like, "So you're a Christian?" And they were like, "No." And I remember being like, "Oh." Like, because that my upbringing was so different. It was like, and we talked about Christianity and Islam, of course. So I was kind of, it was interesting to me that you could just be not nothing, because that sounds disparaging against those people's identities, but they didn't have a specific
affiliation.
ethnicity or a religious affiliation that they were kind of connected to.
Wow. That that's interesting. That even within such a small portion of the country, you were able to still have that bubble and that sense of
Yeah.
community, which is wow.
And I would say that my parents and the community worked very hard for it. And I also
Hmm.
think it's kind of a lesson for Jews in cities that have much larger Jewish populations. We shouldn't take for granted how easy it is in those places to be Jewish. In LA, I drive around when I'm there and I see kosher, kosher supermarkets and delis and synagogues, and that's an amazing thing. But we should still work hard to be actively Jewish. Like that is why I'm the way I am, because my family and my community worked really hard. They weren't just going to leave it up to chance, and they had to work because otherwise there would have been no Jewish identity.
That yeah, I I totally I hear where you're coming from. That's like I'm sure a lot kind of a parallel to here in the States for people that are watching, kind of like Jews in the Midwest, some or in the
Yeah,
South, it can be very, very tough. You're in a minority within a minority. So I'm sure you
Yeah.
for people that identify that way or have that experience, they can relate to Ben in that way. You definitely had to work hard, and your family had to work hard to keep that Jewish identity. For your followers, everybody knows that you are queer and that you identify as queer. How was that environment for you, having another minority on top of being Jewish? Like how was that for you?
It was a great challenge, and not really because I felt any source of tension with my Jewish identity. I have to
Mhm.
say, until I kind of, conceived or discovered or started working on Jewish pride, I saw that identities as quite separate. But I really struggled with my LGBTQ plus identity. Like, I had a hard time. I'm 36, so I was born during the AIDS epidemic, and I kind of feel that that colored the perception that existed of LGBTQ plus people when I grew up. So I had internalized huge amounts of homophobia and huge amounts of shame. So I had to do a lot of work to undo that internalization and to become proud. But it was quite separate. I was very lucky, and I actually think that our community is quite good at creating space for LGBTQ plus Jews. We're not necessarily in every single part of our community as we're aware, but there are communities that we can be a part of. And even in Glasgow, the Orthodox community were always incredibly respectful to me. And I worked for the community and came out while I was working for the community. And I was just as respected. I felt just as respected afterwards as I did before. But I was going through my own turmoil that was connected to society at large and overt homophobia and the shame that I felt.
So when did, with that big separation, especially right when you came out, you were trying to figure out what would work for you and what didn't work for you. How were you able to meld your queer identity and your Jewish identity? And I wouldn't say make it into one, because obviously
Yeah.
we have different facets of ourselves, but how were you able to have them kind of meld well together in a way?
It was really through the concept of pride. It was the idea of pride and the idea that both of these communities can benefit from the power of pride. And I think that that is one thing we have to understand. It is still Pride Month right now for the LGBTQ plus community, and my work is involved in building a Jewish pride movement. And for both communities, pride is transformative. It can change our lives. The journey that I went on with my LGBTQ plus identity informed the work that I did on Jewish pride, which is kind of extraordinary. And I'm very proud of that fact. I'm very proud to be a gay Jew and to be speaking all over North America and, all over the world. And to be able to say that this movement that I started was built specifically on the work that I did personally with regard to my LGBTQ plus identity. And I think that's a really powerful thing. But that was it. It was about me understanding that, there's similarities, and both identities, both communities need pride in the same way. So you start to just feel whole. It's not about feeling one, as you said. It's about feeling whole in who you are and whatever parts make you up. There's
Mm-hmm.
diverse parts in all of us, but it's about feeling whole, I think.
I can definitely relate to that. You're talking about how Jewish pride and queer pride, LGBTQ plus pride are almost one and the same. It's that sense of taking ownership and lifting yourself up. Who or what inspired you to make that realization to start the Jewish pride movement, which melds into the queer pride movement as well?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they're one, but I would say that they're built on the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
they're built on what you said, right? It's the same concept,
Yeah.
and it speaks to multiple communities. It speaks to the Black community, to women, to the Asian community, to whoever, right? We can all benefit from the power of pride. The journey that led me specifically to reflect on my LGBTQ plus experience and then kind of do this work on Jewish pride, it was Jeremy Corbyn, and it's kind of unfortunate that it took a very negative experience, right? Like, but that's often the case with pride. It would be great if we didn't need these outside stimuli, but in this case, in both cases, I did actually, or rather, it just was. Whether I needed them or not, who knows? But it just was. So it was Jeremy Corbyn, and I was a Holocaust educator. That was the work that I focused on, and my focus was on historic Jew hatred. I wasn't really very clued up on things that were happening in the current day. I didn't really pay attention to it. I understood it, but I didn't really pay a huge amount of attention to it because my focus was so specific. And then the Jeremy Corbyn crisis started, and I, watched it for a period, and I was horrified, and I found myself understanding why this was happening because of my kind of historical perspective. So I went on Twitter, and I think because I was an educator and I had a very specific perspective, I gained a following, which was wonderful. And I was also observing, and I observed two things. One was the British Jewish community be a beacon to the global Jewish community. It was a moment in Britain, that crisis was a moment in Britain where the Jewish community came together. We stood as one and we said, enough is enough. We're not tolerating this. And the non-Jewish world kept saying to us, stop talking about it. Shut up. This is done. And we kept saying no. And it was incredible. It was incredibly inspiring and empowering. But at the same time, I did see often very high profile left wing Jews who I didn't feel expressed Jewish pride. They would excuse Corbyn. They would still say, well, we should vote for him, even if he's not great for Jews. And I just thought that's kind of unacceptable. And I don't know the moment it happened, but I guess I started to reflect on my own experience as an LGBTQ plus person. And I started to be like, no, this community needs pride. It needs a specific pride movement. And I think at the beginning there was a little confusion over whether I meant pride for every Jew or Jewish pride as in for LGBTQ plus Jews. And I'm very clear on this. This is for every Jew. This is in parallel to the LGBTQ plus pride movement, but it's not just for LGBTQ plus Jews. It's a movement that would inspire, educate, and empower every Jew. And that was it. After I had that realization. All right, listen, I don't want to give myself too much props. I'm sure it was a series of realizations, right? I started talking about it, and I started using specifically the phrase Jewish pride. And I recorded a video, maybe in the summer of 2018 or 2019 maybe, that was like, why are you proud of being Jewish? Because I thought it was so important that we were rooting ourselves into what makes us wonderful and special, as opposed to basing our identities on fighting against Corbyn. We did fight Corbyn, but we're not doing that because that is just who we are. We're so much more than the hate that we experience.
I wish a lot more Jews felt that way because, I mean, I know we kind of joke about it all the time that, oh, our whole our whole existence is based off our trauma. Every holiday is about something bad that happened to us and how we overcame it. But I love that you're able to take a moment from and for to tell people that it's okay. We don't have to acknowledge the tragedy every time. We can take pride in like the happy
Yeah,
things that have happened and the good things, which I wish a lot more
yeah,
Jews would do. Because and we
yeah,
joke about it all the time, but when are we going to take a moment to be like, it's okay, we don't have to talk about like how we were like systemically eliminated or kicked out of almost every
yeah.
country. It's okay.
And also, even if we do talk about it, understanding that's not all we are. So, for
Uh-huh.
example, you may have heard the phrase. There's a phrase, like a phrase that I've heard a lot, which is, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat.
Yeah.
And people joke that this is the basis for every Jewish festival. And I say, no, it's, they tried to kill us, we survived, and we thrived, let's eat. Because that's it. We ignore that element, right? We ignore the cultural wealth that we developed. We ignore the evolution of our culture, the incredible things we did, the incredible things that we were able to contribute to the wider world. The hatred is a part of our experience, and we will always have to discuss it, but it's not the only part. And when
Mm-hmm.
you root your identity in that as the only part, it's very dangerous. I was, as I said, a Holocaust educator, and my nightmare as a Holocaust educator and an indicator that I had failed in my task was when I took kids to Poland, and I did lead trips to Poland to take some Scottish Jewish youth, to the camps to learn and understand a little more. And if they said to me, this is why I'm Jewish, I was like, no, it's not why you're Jewish. This is a terrible thing that happened, and it can inspire us to be more committed to our Jewishness. Sure, fine, whatever. But this is not why we're Jewish. We're not Jewish because the Nazis and their allies tried to eliminate all of the Jews and 6 million of us were murdered. That's not why we're Jewish. We're Jewish because we belong to a beautiful, distinct civilization that is worthy of respect and that we should feel privileged to belong to. I really feel lucky to be Jewish. I had a conversation recently with someone who had lost their mother, a non-Jewish person. We had a really, wonderful, moving conversation because I lost my father about 6.5 years ago, and we were talking about the process of grief and how to mourn. And I said, listen, one of the things I really felt very profoundly was after my father's passing was that I felt proud to be Jewish, because in that moment we were given a manual on how to mourn. It was like, okay, we're going to have the funeral, then we're going to have Shiva. This is what we do at Shiva. Then we're going to have the Shloshim, the 30-day period following. This is how we're going to do then. This is what we're going to do then. We're not going to shave. Okay, great. Da, 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 da. We are a rich civilization that deserves respect just as any other civilization. And we need to understand that. And we need to take ownership of it. You know, just like LGBTQ plus pride has empowered us as LGBTQ plus people to take ownership of our identities, Jewish pride has to do the same. You know, we are the masters of our own destiny. We are more than the hate that we are targeted with, and we will not be defined by it.
Yeah. Mic drop.
Great.
Mic drop.
Done. It's all over.
So after starting the Jewish Pride movement, did you at times kind of feel like you were preaching but you weren't practicing? Were there times where you doubted yourself, where you feared what you were preaching? Like, have there been moments?
I've never been asked that question, and I've done a lot of interviews and events. That's a really fantastic question. So I'll take it the way I first interpreted it first, and then I'll move on to the way you kind of clarified. You know, have I ever felt that I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, which is what I thought you were going to ask, and I think that's a really important thing to discuss. And yeah, absolutely there were. My Jewish identity is also a work in progress. My Jewish action is also a work in progress. So I was kosher for the first 25 years of my life. And then there was a 10-year period from 25 to 35. For whatever reason, I wasn't kosher. And that extended into my work on Jewish pride. You know, so I published my first book in 2021, which is 2 years ago. So for 2 years with Jewish pride, I wasn't keeping kosher. And about, maybe 7 months ago, I decided to start keeping a semblance of kashrut. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm keeping kosher, but I've decided not to eat pork and not to eat shellfish anymore, because I wanted to be grounded into my Jewishness, and I wanted my Jewishness to be more than just my work. And that kind of does become a bit of an odd thing when your professional life is so much rooted in your identity that I think it can become that's how you express your identity. So in terms of practicing what I'm preaching, that was a realization for me that I thought, I'm encouraging these people to do X, Y, and Z, and here I am not necessarily doing it because my mind is so focused on my work. So that was a real moment of reflection for me. And then have there been moments where I've been unsure? 100%. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, have I made a difference? Is this going to work? Is this going to last? 100%. I mean, those are the things in some ways that keep me up at night, because, I want this to be successful for our people. And people say to me, what would the hallmark of a successful Jewish pride movement be? And it's one, multi-generational, and the second is sustainable, right? It has to be every Jewish person feels connected to it. And it has to be something we're fighting for, discussing long after I'm gone, right? This is not about me. My life, my experience, my work may have inspired it, but this is much bigger than me, as all of this is. This is much bigger than each and every one of us. We are part of something bigger than us. And that's, I think, what we're all fighting for. So, yeah, 100%. It does make me worried. And it does make me worried when you see kind of the growth in anti-Zionism amongst Jewish youth. 100%. But what you have to do is, if you have conviction, if you really believe, and I really believe wholeheartedly about the power of pride. I know how transformative pride is. And I mean, we're recording this, I don't know when this is going to go out, but we're recording this on Friday the 23rd of June, and I'm this weekend on the cover of the Jewish Journal with a piece called How Pride Saved My Life. And it really did. Pride saved my life. And I want it to transform the Jewish community in the way that it has transformed the LGBTQ+. And I think it can, but we have to fight for it. Just like we did as LGBTQ plus people. It doesn't just happen. We have to educate. We have to have difficult conversations. It's not about like a blanket agreement. We're Jews. We're not going to always agree on things. We know that. But we should understand acceptable boundaries. And for me, an unacceptable thing to say is to debate Israel's right to exist. We should not be permitting that. We can debate Israeli politics. And I'm sure you and I could have a fascinating conversation about what's happening in Israel right now, or whatever. But we're not going to debate whether Israel has a right to exist. We have to have boundaries, and that's a really
Yeah.
important part of Jewish pride. And also, I've got to say, I love that you asked me this question because I've never been asked it before. And when you're driving, I describe when you're driving your own bus, it can be difficult to maintain your foot on the pedal. So I'm about to quote Evita. So for any of you who don't know, Evita is a musical by Andrew Lloyd
Mm-hmm.
Webber. Madonna was in the film in the 90s. It's a big part of LGBTQ plus kind of culture, actually, because Madonna's obviously a gay icon, and Evita is also kind of a gay icon as an individual, though she's maybe a little problematic. She was the first lady of Argentina, and there's a big musical about her. And there's this, and I love that musical. I love musical theatre, so we could do another podcast all on that. But there's a line which is sometimes it's very difficult to keep momentum if it's you that you're following. And yeah, sometimes it's challenging to keep up the energy. And I look at some of my friends and they work for companies and they get a salary every month and they turn up and they do the job and they work really hard, but it's a different type of work.
Mm-hmm.
My this work is academic, it's intellectual, and it's deeply emotional. And when I'm the one trying to build something, yeah, that can be difficult because sometimes I'm like, I just want to lie in my bed and look at memes on Instagram just like everyone else. I don't want to. You don't always want to be inspiring. You don't always want to lead.
I definitely can feel that on a different level. I think other creators and other influential
Yeah.
people can feel that too. Or
Yes.
you sometimes things get so crazy that you kind of get lost in it for your second. You're like, wait, where am I standing? What am I doing? It's what have you done personally to be able, besides kind of just taking a step back and really grounding yourself in your Jewish roots, have there been other things that you've been able to do to kind of take a moment and just pause?
Yeah. I've come off social media not for very long, and I never announced it because I don't. I mean, I'm maybe part of me is scared to announce it in case no one cares. Right? That'd be really embarrassing if I'm like I'm going off Twitter and people are like crickets. So I don't announce it. I just kind of silently go off, and that makes a huge difference because I love social media in a sense because you and I met on Instagram, right? It
Mm-hmm.
brings us together. I got a book deal because of Twitter. I gained this career because of Twitter. So I'm not going to sit here and bash social media without nuance, but it's also very toxic. It's
Mm-hmm.
also very damaging. It impacts our mental health. And, I will say I'm 36 and it still impacts my mental health. Going off has given me space at times when I needed it because I love the work. I love the history. I love being Jewish and I love the work. So it's not that the work exhausts me, but the way I have to communicate on social media and the way I have to interact on social media can be exhausting. So I've at times come off. And listen, it's scary. That can be a scary thing to do because you think, well, maybe I won't be relevant anymore
Yeah.
because I am building a career, right? There's two things happening simultaneously. Maybe I won't be relevant. Maybe people won't care. Maybe my following will drop. And I think this is actually a very brave thing to do, but you have to try your hardest to cut out that noise and shut out that noise and say, no, I need a break. I will burn out. And there's definitely moments I felt like I was close to burnout. I'm in it for the long haul and it's a marathon, not a sprint. Actually, earlier this year, I'll say maybe March to April, I was feeling really burnt out, and I had just started working on my third book, which is not a great combination, right? To start a new project and then feeling burnt out. I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm so mentally exhausted, and I definitely have had moments where I'm like, is this the work I want to be doing? And I was given very good advice, and I was told, take a break from social media and stop work on the book right now. You're not stopping work on the book, you're putting a pause on it. And that was great advice because I did. And I didn't feel guilty because often when you're your own boss, when you're working freelance and when you're doing these projects and when you're working on something like a book, if you don't do it every second, you feel like you feel guilty for wasting time. Like, oh no, now this is time I should be researching or writing or whatever. And you're like, no, I'm allowed to again be on Instagram like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So giving myself permission to take a pause was really great because now actually I'm back in research mode and I'm enjoying it.
I've kind of felt in that way too, that you're saying like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. That's how I'm feeling more so now with not only social media, but the work that I do outside of Jewish activism. It's interesting that you mentioned that you love musical theater because that's what I majored in. I'm a I'm a musical theater major, and
Wow,
that's the world that I'm in. And
amazing.
I it's just been like I've put so much of my energy and my heart into what I'm doing for Jews and for the community, but kind of feel like I've lost myself a little bit if I'm going to be
Yep,
raw about it. It's just, I mean, thankfully I'm starting school for my master's in the fall and I'm going to be back into
incredible.
it. I'm very excited, but it's I'm afraid that once I start putting the energy into that, is this going to fade?
Yeah, I kind of relate to what you're saying to an extent. I love fashion, and I used to work in fashion. I was at Tom Ford for a while,
Oh,
like
wow.
100 years ago, and I felt like I lost that. Like when I was living in Hong Kong, I felt like I'd lost that love, and I hadn't even noticed that I'd lost it. And in the last like maybe year and a half, I've rediscovered it, and it feels great to be able to engage in the thing that I love. So I think what I would encourage anyone to do, and this is a lesson for myself too, is try and find the balance. It's not a choice. We don't have to choose between fashion or being a Jewish author or musical theatre or being a author and a podcast host and an activist. You can be all of those things. And actually I find when you're able to kind of marry the multitudes of your identity, you are more whole, you're happier, and it's also more authentic. When I do my in-person speaking events, like I put a lot of thought into what I wear, and it's very nice when someone comments, and it doesn't detract from my Jewish work. It feels like when I'm on that stage having a conversation about Jewish pride, that I'm doing so in my most authentic form, if I'm looking the way I want to look. So that's what I would say, right? It's not a choice. You can
Mm.
be a musical theatre star, you can win a Tony. That's what I'm rooting for. um,
Tony.
and you can also do this work. It's not a choice, right?
Yeah.
You're able to we are there We have so many different parts, and I think the danger is when we try to segment ourselves and ignore the other aspects of our personalities. People don't know. I have quite a serious persona on Twitter, a little bit less serious on Instagram, but still quite serious. And people who meet me, they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that you were funny." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm actually really funny. I'm a hoot. I'm a fun person to spend time with." And being able
You're a
to
queer
show,
Jew, of course you're going to be a hoot.
yeah, of course, right? Yeah, it's like, yeah, yes, precisely. I was walking down the street earlier, and there was a woman trying to get past me and my friend, and I didn't really notice at first, and I was doing an impression of Jennifer Coolidge from White Lotus, and I was like, "We are some high-end gays." And this woman laughed behind me, and I was like, "Oh!" And she was like, "Can I also get past?" I was like, "Yeah." It's like, but we're so many more things. We're not just one thing, and that's the thing about us having this conversation as LGBTQ plus Jews. We're showing our straight allies in the Jewish community who we really are, but we're also giving a light and a voice and space for LGBTQ plus Jews. We're allowed to be every part of ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, going to Broadway and seeing Funny Girl was the greatest thing ever, and I actually really enjoyed the fact that it was kind of a Jewish theme. But you're allowed to be exactly who you are and celebrate the diversity of who you are and
Mhm.
celebrate your multiple parts, and you can find that balance, but it's you have to think about it, I guess, right? You have to be conscious of it.
It's easier said than done.
It is
Yeah.
but you know yes, it is easier said than done, but it is possible. I think that's the thing that we have to, Harvey Milk said, a great gay Jewish icon said, we have to give him hope, and that hope is so important, and it is possible to find balance and to find peace, but it takes work. And let me tell you, as a 36-year-old, the work doesn't stop. When you fight, you're an adult, and you're like, oh man, all of the adults from my childhood were also just winging it. Like, none of us have any idea what's going on.
That's something because you're 36, I'm 23. You're like 13 years older
My
than
God,
me.
I'm 13 years older than you. I had my bar mitzvah when you were born.
Wait,
Yeah,
what? Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
I was a man. I was a
Oh,
man.
oh my gosh. But I'm noticing that too because I'm in that weird phase of that I'm in between kind of young adulthood and adulthood, and I'm seeing that even like when I'm with my parents or when I'm with adults, some adults have no idea what they're doing either. And I'm like, wait, I
No,
thought you all had it figured it
yeah,
out.
no, it's a lie. It's a total lie. We're all figuring it out. We're all winging it, and we're all asking our friends, being like, "What should we do about this? Or what did you do about it? And help me. Oh, you have a house. How do I get a mortgage? Like, you don't know this stuff just innately. I don't know any of this stuff. That's the stuff I'm very like deficient in. So I'm always speaking to my friends and my partner. But yeah, I don't think you ever stop growing and developing. I don't think you're ever like, I am the finished product. I think it's a work in progress. So when there's messiness, when there's moments of insecurity or moments of even failure,
Mm-hmm.
that is part of it. I have failed a lot in my life, and that is part of it. It really is. It's not about the failure. It's how you respond to it and the lessons, and you're constantly having to work out your identity. It's always a conversation.
Yep. Even though you're saying that you don't have it figured out and you're still trying to find your footing, you had enough figured out to write a book. So
Yeah,
this is Ben's book, Jewish
that's the
Pride.
first one. There's
The
two.
first one, Rebuilding a People. It's you can get it on Amazon. I got it on Amazon. You
Of
could get
course,
it at a
of course.
bookstores in the US, probably like Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
What was the price? I was gonna say the process. I don't know why.
What
Now
price is it?
your accent is catching on to me now. What was the process of writing your first book? And it's been you mentioned it's been 2 years. This came out 2021
Yeah,
as we
yeah,
were kind of still in the pandemic, but easing out
yeah,
of it.
for sure.
How do you feel that what you wrote in the book is still relevant now?
I've also never been asked that question. This is like up there with my top interviews. This is honestly fantastic.
Oh.
It's so interesting you say that because when you're an author, you don't sit and read your own work after it's published. So I
Mm-hmm.
haven't. My second book came out in October of last year. I've not read it since it came out. It came out because that would be really weird. Imagine if I was sitting in an airport reading my own book and someone was like, "Who's that author?" I was like, "It's me." That's very embarrassing. But I did have the opportunity recently to reread the first one because I recorded the audiobook. And that was a really weird experience because when I wrote that book, I would not have called myself a writer. I guess by definition I was an author because I had a book at the end of it, but I learned to writing that book. So for anyone who has read the first book, read the second, and will hopefully read my third book when it comes out at the end of next year, I hope they will see a real evolution in my writing style and my skills as a writer. But in terms of whether it still stands, yes, it does. I was really proud of that. And there's definitely elements which were included which very much spoke to the way the Jewish world was at the time or specific conversations that were happening at that time. Absolutely. And I think that it would be impossible to not have that right. Of course, it's time specific. But the ideas of Jewish pride, the ideas of Jewish empowerment, the notion that we're in a toxic relationship with the non Jewish world and that we should stand firm and we should define our own identities and we should not be told who and what we are. And we should also reject their attempts to shame us. We will not be shamed. We will stand as proud Jews. We will not be Jews with trembling knees. And that still stands. But it was a really weird experience. It was a trippy experience. And I was kind of like, as I was reading it in the studio, I was like editing it as I was going. And I was like, oh, this sentence I don't love. But it's where I was at that time. It was my skill set at the time. But yeah, I'm really, what was most important to me were the ideas. And the ideas still definitely stand, which I'm thrilled about. Because imagine if I read it and I was like, no, don't care about Jewish pride anymore. Cancelled. Like, no, it's done. Cancel the whole thing. No,
Oh
that would
my
be
god.
terrible. But I'm glad I didn't do that.
It's like the joke when at the end of Prime Month everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna resign from BA." It's okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the company. There's that meme of the queer person
Mm-hmm.
who's like standing on on May 31st, like just nicely standing, and then on June 1st they're like because all of the logos are like flying at their faces. It's like we're being attacked.
There's the one with
Pretty fun.
the Squidward meme where his eyes are shut, and then when he opens his eyes, it's just rainbow eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how.
Yeah, it's like an interesting thing. It's like definitely an interesting conversation about this month and how it is utilized by different companies and how it's
Yeah.
maybe exploited, but also at the same time why it's still important to us.
Yeah.
Like next Saturday, so London Pride is the 1st of July. That's London LGBTQ plus Pride. And there's an Israeli restaurant here called Miznon, which I go to all the time because it is just unbelievable. And I guess it's kind of like an LGBTQ plus friendly venue. And they're partnering with a British Jewish organization called Bat Mitzvah, which is obviously a play on bar mitzvah. And it's like they do like these club nights, which are kind of themed on Hanukkah or whatever, whenever they fall. And they're doing a party there next week.
Are you going?
And it's like amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I went in today and I mentioned to my partner. I didn't know what was happening, but I mentioned to my partner. I was like, "Oh, we should go in and we should get tickets." And it's fun. It's like those moments where you're able to marry your multiple identities. That's the best. So when you watch a Broadway show and there's a Jewish theme or a Jewish subtext, for you, I'm sure that's incredible, right? When you're able to really marry your identities and celebrate who you are unashamedly, that's like the best.
Yeah. You had mentioned that you were, while writing the book, you were definitely trying to get your footing as more so a writer. You're an author, but you were trying to get your footing as a writer. Did you, when you were compiling all these ideologies and all these thoughts and feelings and research that you wanted to share with the world, did you feel that it was tough putting that down in writing in a book?
Yeah. No, because I'll give you an insight into my writing style. I guess I am a writer now because I have 2 books, I'm working on a third, I have a column in the Jerusalem Post. But the way that I write is to dictate to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm sitting there writing, I'm saying the words out loud and they form in my mind and I say them and I write them down. Yeah, like it's always challenging when you're trying to create a cohesive piece of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to tell a story and you want to make sure that everything you're doing is working. That's what I always say. I'm like, is this sentence working? Does this paragraph work? And it's not about whether it being good or bad. It's about, does it contribute to the aim? Does it answer my question? And that is a challenge for sure. And that's kind of a technical skill. It's why you have an editor to help you place it and place different things. But the act of actual writing and pouring my thoughts out, no, I found that very easy. As you can tell, I'm a talker. I have a lot of thoughts. So it was just a bit like blah 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 blah. And then it's like, oh my god, I have a book. And then you have to edit it and make it like not garbled and take out the bits that don't work and rework some of the bits that do. So it's a process. It's like a real process, but it is a labor of love. It's kind of a bit crazy to me that I have 2 books out and I'm working on a third. I never thought that would happen. Like in a billion years, I never thought it.
I never thought I'd be here interviewing people for a podcast, but here we are.
Exactly. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I kind of, do you ever feel when you're putting out all this work and you're very proud of your work and you're proud of the effort that you put into it, do you ever feel that sense of imposter syndrome? Because I definitely I'm kind of feeling it now. I'm like, wait, I did that? No, I didn't.
I actually say I don't suffer from imposter syndrome, but I do have a moment when I'm right at the beginning of each of the books I've written, and even at the beginning of this one, I ask, am I smart enough to do this? Like, am I smart enough to write a book? And I wrote a book, I wrote 2 books, so I guess the answer is yes, I am. But yeah, for sure I have that question. And I think that you should be like, not necessarily asking if you're smart enough, but you should always have humility and checking in yourself and be like, am I the person to say this? And I really felt like I was. I am an LGBTQ plus Jew. I experience the power of LGBTQ plus pride. Yes, I am the person to write this book, but you still have that moment of fear or insecurity or nervousness. And yeah, I think that's normal, but you also have to, I think that you have to like take a bit of a step back and observe yourself objectively and be like, yeah, and I still have moments of feeling insecure or feeling that my Instagram is not growing and my posts don't get enough likes, all of that stuff. But you do have to take a step back and think, what is this really about? Why am I doing this? I'm not doing it for Instagram likes, that's nice, but I'm doing this to make a difference. And I believe, based on the conversations I've had, that I have made a difference, at least to some people. So you have to kind of focus on that and be proud of that, and not, with these voices, you have to just send them on their way. You acknowledge it and say, I see you, and I'm sending that doubt, I'm sending that imposter syndrome away. You have to actively challenge it. We cannot allow that person to kind of move into our minds, evict them.
The way that you convey how all the information that you've studied, all the information that you've taken in, all the observations that you've made, it inspires a lot of people. If it didn't
Mm.
inspire a lot of people, there wouldn't be a second or potentially a third book. Who inspires you? When you're able to inspire this many people, I'm going to be honest with you. Someone asked you to be here. Someone specifically said, "Is Ben Freeman going to be on this podcast?" And I was like, "That is a very good question." And then I was like, "Can we do this?" And you were like, "Yeah." So obviously, you are
Yeah.
there are people who you inspire, but who inspires you?
I've also never been asked that question before. You're a really good interviewer, by the way. Yeah, really, like up there with the. I've been interviewed a lot of times, and you're asking interesting questions about more than just what does the book say on page 13. It's like, well, people can read the book and find that out, to be honest. Lots of people inspire me. Lots of people. I think that there's people in my personal life. My partner inspires me. My friends inspire me. In terms of the work, I love Harvey Milk. The film about Harvey Milk changed my life. Like it really did. That is what really. I'd been on a kind of a choppy journey to LGBTQ plus pride prior to watching that film, but when I saw that, it went into overdrive, and it made me understand. I was like, the way that we're treated is unacceptable, and we should be angry, and we should be fighting back, and we should reject what they think about us. So he was an incredibly important person to me. I have someone in my own life who I call my Dumbledore, and his name is Winston, and he is an amazing Jewish academic, and he is incredibly inspiring to me because he's the only person who matches my kind of like intensity talking about this topic. And I remember being at his apartment in Brighton because I met him through his wife, Fiona Sharp, who's an amazing advocate in Britain for refugees and also for the Jewish community. Um, and I remember like him and I were having a conversation, and he like screamed at me across the dining room table, "They destroyed a civilization," and we were having a conversation about the Holocaust, and I just thought, wow, this person is so impressive and exciting and inspiring. So him for sure. And then in terms of, you know, celebrities, I'm a huge Britney Spears fan. I think that she is one of the strongest people around. It's so crazy that people can say what they like about her Instagram, but what she went through and that she's still going. It's about putting one foot in front of the other and continuing to do that. So there's loads of people. I'm trying to think who else inspires me. Like loads of people in this space. Eden Cohen inspires me. Eve Barlow inspires me. Isaac DeCastro inspires me. People who are just passionate and authentic. Jordan inspires me. We are a product of the world that we're living in. And I'm someone who is on social media and I'm watching the same as everyone else. And yes, I have a platform, but I'm also watching other people's platforms and being amazed at their strength and their resilience and their pride and their ability to kind of reject the hate and advocate for themselves in our community. And then, of course, there's people from other communities who do amazing work, right? It's not just about our community. Like, I really am inspired by it's like an endless supply. And I think you have to be like that because you have to be open to growing and changing and open to having your perspective changed. And that is what to me what happens when you're inspired. It's like you're given a little bit a glimpse into something else, into a different idea, a different way of thinking, and that's really exciting. So you can't close yourself off. And let me tell you, no one is too famous or too successful to be inspired by someone else. And people who aren't inspired by others, that would worry me. The people I meet, like the kids who are putting, you know, proud Jew on their social media bio. I wasn't doing that when I was like 15.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. So that's inspiring.
People are able to do that, and it brings up a really interesting point of how a lot of the younger crowd. Actually just saw a play. It's called Love and Science. I saw it at New York City Center, and it's a queer play about gay scientists during the AIDS crisis, and
Wow.
it's funny at times. There's some comedy, there's romance in it, but obviously it's a very serious show. It's talking about how everything unfolded, and at the very end, one of the scientists, he's older, he's a professor at this university at Columbia, I believe, and one of the students is coming over and he says, "Oh, we'd like you to be a faculty advisor for our LGBTQ plus alliance. You've done so much good work." And I felt a little weird about the way that the character went about it. He said, "Oh, you guys don't realize that none of this could have been done 30 years ago." You
Mm.
and he was just he felt very he felt he,
Bitter?
he felt bitter. That's yeah, he felt
Yeah,
bitter about it because there he's like, "Oh, you guys are prancing around doing all of this. You're able to do all of this. The bar was set for you. You did not set the bar. The bar
yeah,
was set for you. And you guys aren't acknowledging all the hard work that went
yeah,
into you being able to prance around in the street with a rainbow flag or to put on your bio that you're queer." And
yeah.
it's just it made me think for a second. It made me think of like we are doing all of this and we need to be more grateful to the people who set the way for us. And
A
he
hundred
brought up a
percent.
really good point. I mean, I didn't like the way that he did it. It kind of felt like he was attacking the student, but I kind of saw where he was coming from.
Yeah, and I think that it's, yes, I agree. And I think in that context they were paying tribute because they were asking him to be the advisor. So, but anyway, it was a play. But yeah, I always talk about the modern Jewish pride movement because I don't want anyone to ever think that this is the first time Jews have had pride. We are standing on the shoulders who came before us. So whether it's the pioneers who built Israel, whether it's Ben Gurion or whoever, whether it's the Warsaw Ghetto uprisers, whether it's the leaders in communities in Poland or Tunisia or Iraq or America or wherever, the list can go on. We have the Maccabees, the Bar Kokhba revolt. We're standing on their shoulders. And that's why, again, specifically, I talk about the modern Jewish pride movement because we're inspired by them. I find Hanukkah to be a particularly inspiring festival. And it's kind of interesting because it's not a Yom Tov, right? It's not a holy day. There isn't actually even an Erev. Think about the other Chagim. There's an Erev, there's a night before. There isn't with Hanukkah. It starts, we get into it, and that's day one, right? Like the first candle is day one. There's not like there's a pre candle. So, in some regards, it's less important, perhaps. And it's certainly not in the Torah, but I find it so inspiring because, like, it's not to me as a secular Jew. The miracle is not that the candle lasted. The miracle is that these real people, these real Judean fighters, fought the Greeks and defeated them. And after that, we re-established sovereignty in our land for the first time in hundreds of years. The Hasmoneans is the Jewish kingdom that came after, the Jewish dynasty that came after. That's incredibly inspiring. And we do have to pay tribute. We do have to acknowledge. And I think that it's ultimately because we're part of something bigger than us. At the moment, we're at the end of a thread, and the thread is directly connected to those that came before us. And as history progresses, the thread will move on from us. And hopefully, the people in the future will look back and include us in the people that inspired them. But we're all part of this unbroken thread that makes up a tapestry, which is one of the reasons I love being Jewish. It's so remarkable. But yeah, we are. You do have to acknowledge that you're part of something bigger than you, in that it's not just about your specific context. There's a wider story to be told.
I wish a lot of Jews felt that way. And I also wish a lot
Yeah.
of Jews wouldn't be hating themselves, which is actually a perfect segue into your second book,
Yeah.
which
Very good.
I found very, very interesting that you decided to focus on the hate, the self hate, and the contradictions within our own community, which it's kind of
Yeah.
like the saying of like, how are you going to fix the outside world if your house is in shambles?
100%. And Jewish pride is about turning inwards. It's about understanding the impact of Jew hatred on us. It's about understanding our identity. And I believe that internalized anti-Jewishness, which is what I would call this phenomenon, other people would call it internalized anti-Semitism. Some people historically referred to it as self-hate. I think that is the biggest internal threat facing our community,
Mm-hmm.
because we are absorbing the hate that exists in the world around us. We're bringing it into ourselves, we're bringing it into our community. And by the way, we've been doing it for millennia. This is not a new problem. As I describe in the book, the ancient Judeans who lived in Greek ruled Judea the men were reversing their circumcisions. And and the Brit is a covenant with God, right? And at that time, they would especially have thought that. So these Jewish men and boys were rejecting this connection with Hashem, with God, in order to be accepted by the Greeks. It's fine for culture to evolve. It's fine for people to kind of chart their own path, but we have to be asking why.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing this? Is it because I like that idea of culture? I'm going to marry it with my own? Or is it because I want to be more like them because I want to be accepted? Or do I want to be more like them because I think they're superior to me? I used to say, I'm Jewish, but I'm Zionist, but even though I was a proud Jew and a proud Zionist, there was a part of me which wanted to show the non-Jewish world that, hey, I'm not so different to you. You should accept me. You should like me. I'm one of the good guys. No, that's not pride.
Mm-mm.
That is not acceptable. We should never diminish ourselves to be accepted. We should stand tall. We should explain who we are. We should be confident enough to do that. And we would hope that our friends and allies will listen. But we're not going to make ourselves smaller. And it is a problem. And this is one of the first books in a century on this topic.
Yeah,
Articles of
I never see this. I mean,
no, you don't.
we rarely see, even in the activism space online, I rarely see people talking about our own internalized hate.
No.
And I mean, I bring it up jokingly, but I mean it seriously. I say anti-Zionist Jews are self-hating Jews, which is,
Yeah, I would use different language, but I believe that
yeah,
Jewish anti-Zionism is internalized anti-Jewishness by definition.
yeah,
I define internalized anti-Jewishness as being when Jews absorb non-Jewish narratives to define Jews, Judaism, or Jewishness, and allow the non-Jewish world to define our narrative. That is by definition what anti-Zionist Jews have done. I 100% agree. I think we should have empathy for them, even though
yeah.
I strongly criticize, I strongly disagree, and I think that they're dangerous. I think that we should have empathy because ultimately they're victims, and they're victims of Jew hatred, actually. They are victims because they have allowed themselves to be warped and changed by this thing. You know, we're all dealing with elements of shame, we're all dealing with all of it all the time, trauma. But to be so disfigured as a Jew, let's use that word, that you reject our connection with our indigenous land, that's pretty extreme because Israel is our indigenous land and you cannot actually separate the Jews from it. You might try, but you can't. It's not authentic. So Jews that try to, or Jews that have severed their own connection with it, I see themselves as suffering from internalized anti-Jewishness, and I see them as victims. And I don't mean that in a patronizing way. It's just the way I understand the world in these issues. But as I was saying, this is one of the first books in a century on this topic. It is not good enough. Other communities are generations ahead of us in dealing with these issues. The LGBTQ plus community, the Black community have done really important academic research. Why is that not happening in our community? There are reasons, I think, but they're not acceptable. We have to face our demons. We have to deal with these issues to create an authentic pride movement that, as I said, is multi-generational and sustainable.
What would you say are, besides anti-Zionism, what would you say are prime examples of internalized Jew hatred that we experience besides anti-Zionism within our own
So
community?
So in the book, I identify three different manifestations. So I'll work backwards because one of them we've referenced a lot already. One is deployment, and that is when a Jew deploys their identity as a Jew to harm the Jewish communities. And that's really what we see with anti-Zionists, because you never see a quiet anti-Zionist Jew. They're always trying to bring the whole house down. They're not saying to us, okay, I don't believe in it, but good for you. No, they're not saying that. The next is denial, and that's when one just denies their Jewishness or their connection to Jewishness or Judaism. And that often happens again because they misunderstand Jewish identity,
Mm-hmm.
and they would probably absorb non-Jewish ideas of Jewish identity, so they may not see themselves included. And the last form, which I think is perhaps the most insidious, is diminishment. And that is when you say things like, I'm Jewish, but, I'm Zionist, but, or you feel kind of maybe ashamed to tell people that you're Jewish, or you're frightened to tell people that you're Jewish. Maybe you won't stand up for Jewish people. Maybe you're told that we should not be centered even in stories about the Holocaust. Even examples of changing our names, changing our noses. Listen, people can do whatever they want with their bodies. This is not me judging. But again, we have to ask why.
Mhm.
And often when Jewish people have engaged in nose jobs, it's to make them look less Jewish, inverted commas. The modern nose job was invented by an assimilated Jew who eventually gave out free nose jobs at the beginning of the 1930s to help Jews pass. We should know this. We should understand the impact that the hatred has on us. We're not defined by it. We're going to reject it. And again, you can get a nose job, you can dye your hair, you can do what you want, but consider the reasons why.
Yeah.
I used to want to get a nose job. I dyed my hair blonde. There's some pictures floating around of
You
me
had you had
in
your
my mother's.
gay moment. You had your midlife crisis already.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, I'm 36. I think I'm well past my gay midlife crisis. But yeah, no, I dyed my hair blonde because I wanted to look, honestly, Aryan. I wanted to have a small nose. I wanted to dye my hair blonde because I absorbed the idea that to have darker hair, to have a certain type of nose was to be ugly. That is shame imposed on us by the wider world. So there's a plethora of examples. I've just touched on a couple. But what I do in the book and what I'll do here is encourage people to look inside themselves, do it without shame, do it with empathy. This is not our fault. This is something imposed on us by the wider world. This is not our fault, so we can look into ourselves knowing that we've done nothing wrong, but considering how we feel about our Jewishness and how we express it. Are we expressing it with pride, or are we maybe showing elements of shame?
Hmm.
And the answer, I can't answer that really. Everyone has to kind of find that answer themselves, but do the work. And there's now a conversation, thank goodness, happening about this, a small conversation because of the book, but we want this conversation to grow, for this to be something we discuss like other communities.
And be able to, quote unquote, reclaim our story.
Yes. And rebuild our people. Come on. It's like, and the reality is, Jewish pride is like not, it's like, yeah, obviously. Of course we should like ourselves. Of course we should
Hmm.
love being Jewish. It is a miracle. Are you in New York City?
I'm on Long Island, so close enough. Yeah.
Okay, you're in Long Island. I'm a Jew from Scotland living in London, and here we are having a conversation about Jewish identity in 2023. That, my friend, is a miracle.
Hmm.
It's extraordinary. Not just that we're still here, but that we're still here and we're so actively invested in our Jewishness, that we love it so much that we're willing to, spend time on a Friday evening having a long, beautiful conversation about what it means to be Jewish and the issues we face as Jews in the world. We should be immensely proud of ourselves. It's extraordinary. We're extraordinary. We are a miracle.
We survived and we thrived, and
Now let's.
we're thriving. We already
And we are.
yeah, and
Yeah, we are. Look at you. Look what you're doing. Like there's always Jews in every generation who will fight.
mhm.
That's extraordinary. The fact that you've created a podcast called Hot Jewish Podcast is a symbol of us thriving, actually, because it's new Jewish life being created all the time. The cultural wealth in our community is extraordinary.
Hmm. And that's it, it made me think that you say that our culture is so rich. Our our culture is so rich not only from where we come from our indigenous land, but also from the areas that we've been placed
Yes.
into. And I people they put so much there. They say diaspora is terrible. Of course, it's terrible. But what positive thing are we going to take from it? That now our culture is
Yeah.
so vast. We have so many different things going on that we didn't have before. It made our culture just
Richer.
rich. Yeah, richer.
It did. And also, like, for people who are going to, like, poop on the diaspora, I would like to remind them of history. There were Jews who chose not to return from Babylon. There were Jews who lived in Alexandria, Jews who lived in Elephantine. There have always been Jews who lived outside our indigenous land because we are actually just like any other nation. You can live where you want to live. There's British. I'm a British person. I lived in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
and it doesn't mean you're not proud of being a Jew. And we are a product. The marriage of culture in the places in which we lived is really amazing, and that did create beautiful Sephardic culture, which has real, not even echoes, which has reflections of Spain and Portugal. Ashkenazi culture, the different the various Mizrahi cultures. I mean, the languages. There's various Judeo-Arabic languages. There's Ladino. There's Yiddish. Of course, we should celebrate all aspects of Jewish life, and we shouldn't rank them. We shouldn't say that one is better than the others because it's not true. It's fundamentally false, actually. And they're each an expression, a kind of culturally specific expression, or a location specific I'll say that again, a location specific reflection of our indigenous culture. Think about Yiddish. Yiddish is written with Hebrew letters. So there is room for all of this, and every Jew should be able to celebrate our whole indigenous culture and also the thing that they maybe experience in the diaspora, if that's something they're connected to. You don't need to choose.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to. And
No.
now I'm kind of gonna get into the little sneak peek that we were talking about before. So you have these two beautiful books. You have Jewish
Yeah,
Pride and you have Reclaiming Our Story.
I
You
do.
talked about the hate that we experience from the outside world. You talked about the hate that we experience from within our own community.
I
What will
did.
we see in a third book?
Well, it's going to be called Harry Potter and the Missing Dreidel. No, I'm kidding. I love that though. I love Harry Potter. It's going to be so. The second book is called Reclaiming Our Story. I consider this book to be the story, and it's a study on Jewish indigeneity.
Oh, wow.
So where we come from. It's going to be a brief history of the Jewish people, and then an examination of indigeneity as a classification as set out by the United Nations, and examples of how we fit into those categorizations. And I think it's going to be, I hope beyond hope, it's going to be impactful, and it's going to help fundamentally people understand their Jewish identity a little more. And that's what it's about, right? Because it's about doing something with that information. It's not just like, okay, we're an indigenous people, cool, whatever. No, it's about, okay, well, what does that mean for us? How do we incorporate this aspect, this interpretation or understanding of Jewish identity into our lives? Because I really feel, even though I'm British, I feel like as a Jew, I'm a member of a Middle Eastern diasporic community. And I am actually, right? That's what it means to be a Jew in the diaspora, because that's where the word diaspora originated with our story. So, and it doesn't make me, you know, I don't have to choose. I don't have to diminish my Britishness. I can exist in this duality, but I can understand that I have a deep connection to the land of Israel, and that Zionism is an indigenous rights movement. And indigenous rights, again, were set out by the United Nations. And it's not really to argue or make a case, it's more just to help people understand, why the land of Israel? We were offered other lands. Why didn't we choose them? Because they were not our indigenous land. The land of Israel is our indigenous land. And again, it's a miracle that 2,000 years after most of us were expelled, not all of us, but most of us, we rebirthed our state. We regained sovereignty. And the prefix of re is really important. Regained, because we had it once before and it was stolen from us. And we have self determination now in our indigenous land. We're masters of our own destiny. And that's one of the incredible things about Zionism. And I guess what I want to do is offer people another dimension to connect with Israel. You can believe that God gave us the land and it's the promised land, and that's a wonderful thing to believe, and I would never diminish that or argue against it. But there's another dimension, which is that it is our indigenous land and we have a right to be there and a right to self-determination in it.
I love that you're bringing that into it, because that sector of that whole, it feels wrong saying book sector, there's probably like a different term for it, but that whole genre, I feel like there's a lot. We have so many different books talking about our history,
Absolutely.
and
Massive.
you're bringing a different perspective to it. I was going to ask you initially when you were talking about it, I was going to say how is your book going to be different from everything else? But
Yeah.
you you proved it. You're putting explanation behind it. You're putting discussion, when we're just, I feel like a lot of these books, they're just giving us fact. They're like, we're
Yeah.
indigenous. And then they're not really going
Yeah.
into it. And you kind of have to go to other sources. You're giving it all in one package, which I think is going to be really helpful, because there's so much information and it can feel very overwhelming sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think actually they don't use the word indigenous. Like a lot of these books will talk about Jews and Israel, Jews, Zionism, Israel. It's our promised land. It's our historic land. It's our ancient homeland. Like all of these kind of what I would refer to as euphemisms. Indigeneity, saying it's our indigenous land, is like an arrow straight to the center of the point. And you're right, there's so many books, which is, I've got to say, fantastic for me because it means that I have so much to draw from. And the research portion of my writing experience or process is enormous. And this, I'm going to be researching for months before I even start writing properly. I'm still researching right now. But yeah, it's about reframing it.
Mm.
And helping people then understand why, like, you know, why it matters in this specific context. And there's wonderful books that talk about aspects of this, but I've not really discovered any that talk about indigenous using that specific word.
Well, yours is going to be one of the first, and it's going to give,
Yay!
and hopefully, I'm really, really hoping that it changes that narrative and it changes that
Yeah,
perspective for people, because
me
I
too.
started using that vocabulary recently too, that we are indigenous,
Yeah.
from hearing other people say it, from looking into it more. And a lot of people still feel really uncomfortable saying it, because
Yeah.
then they're like thinking, "Oh, we're appropriating language that we're talking about that is used for like Native American culture, people who are indigenous to South America, North America, other
Yeah.
areas of the world." And I just I'm hoping that with this I'm hoping with this book that people feel more comfortable saying that, because it is true, it's a fact.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there's definitely others who talk about it for sure. There's people on social media, definitely articles have been written about it. So I'm not the first by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm one of the first who's putting it in book form. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. People are uncomfortable, and it's like other things. People are also uncomfortable with saying anti-Jewish racism, and they say, "Oh, you're co-opting." It's like, no, I'm deeply respectful of other experiences, but I also want to accurately represent my experience. And when you understand, when you explore the 7 criteria set out by the United Nations, it's like they were written about us. And there's one which is very problematic, which says basically that the indigenous community has to be a minority in their own land, which is kind of an insane thing to say. So if, say, the native or the indigenous Americans, excuse me, regain territory, they would no longer be indigenous to the land. No, it's they're still indigenous. They should be considered as indigenous, and they're still indigenous to the land. So I fundamentally disagree with that. But the other 6 are really, they could be written about us. It's extraordinary. Even kashrut, you know, the mezuzah, tefillin, the mikvah are all indigenous acts. Even circumcision, the brit, is an indigenous act. And we have to start understanding this, right? It's that reframing. It's a lot of this is quite obvious actually when you start to be like, well, yeah, of course, like it comes from there, it's rooted there. You know, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot were harvest festivals. We have a new year, a birthday for trees. It's a very agricultural setup.
Mm-hmm.
It's rooted in we have a Shivat Haminim. We have 7 species of fruit, right? It's all about the land and us being rooted there. Not just that we come from there, that we're rooted there. Um, and yeah, it's extraordinary. And it's we have to start utilizing this idea. And of course, some might say, you know, indigeneity is a modern concept to an extent, maybe even a non-Jewish concept. And I always say, you know, we should define ourselves through Jewish ideas, but I think that it's a tool which can help us explore who we are more authentically, even if it has come from inverted commas the non-Jewish world. It can help us understand what it means to be Jewish. We're not just a religion. We have never been just a religion. We have a God. We have religion, but we're not just a religion. We are a nation, a people, an indigenous tribe.
And ethnicity.
Indigenous tribe, duh, and ethnicity, exactly, all of this
Yep.
stuff. And we should claim it. We should reclaim it, reclaiming our story.
And hopefully reframing it too, as you mentioned.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And
That's it.
I want to give people a taste, for whoever is looking to purchase Reclaiming Our Story or Jewish Pride, because you should. I I want to give people a taste into what you're going to get. And this is a quote from one of your reviews, from Seth Mandel, executive editor of the Washington Examiner magazine. He said that Ben brings clarity and precision to a debate that is too often conducted with buzzwords and insinuations. This book is an essential guide to understanding internalized anti Jewishness. So, Seth is referring to Reclaiming Our Story, Ben's second book, and breaking free from its constraints. We must not let a hostile world determine our identity or our fate. Let us heed Ben's call to reclaim our story. If that doesn't say enough, I don't know what else does. There was now have a whole episode talking about
Yeah.
the greatness of these two beautiful books, and as Ben as a person, the whole goal of this whole podcast. It's interesting that you say, "Oh, you asked me questions that no one's ever asked me." I didn't want to ask you questions about the book because people can go read it. I didn't want to ask you
Yeah.
about questions that are online because people can go read it. I wanted it to be, I say this, I think I've said this in so many of the episodes before yours, but I wanted this to be people seeing you through a lens outside of your page, outside of
Mm.
your work, your literary work, outside of other interviews. I wanted it to be, I'm hoping, a little bit more personal. And I really appreciate you being here today and for sharing your time and sharing your knowledge and sharing your insight into Jewish pride.
Thank you. Well, as I've said, you're up there with the best interviewers I've ever had, and it was. It's like it's more fun to talk about because when you are an author, you talk about your work a lot, but there's different things, different aspects, different angles, different stories that I don't get to tell because no one asks me, and it's really been thoroughly enjoyable. I've loved it, and I would like to come back and talk about musical theatre.
Musical theater and God willing, the third book. You are
Yes.
very much invited back, and we're gonna talk before then. Keep up at
Yeah.
everything. But before I forget, you guys can go pick up Ben's books, Jewish Pride and Reclaiming Our Story, on Amazon. I believe Barnes and Noble, whatever local bookstore you have online, in store. Check if it's in store. But really great. And Ben, where can they find you?
So it's easy. It's at Ben M. Freeman on Twitter and Instagram. The M is very important. A lot of people send me emails, and the M is in my full name is in my email address, and people are like, "It's not reached you." It's like because you forgot the M. The M stands for Maxwell. So Ben Maxwell Freeman is my full name. So at Ben M Freeman on Twitter and Instagram.
Any website or anything? Or
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's www.benmfreeman.com. It's all very easy. Everything is basically. I'm so lucky that I have the handle of Ben M Freeman, www.benmfreeman.com. So yeah.
I get that because when I had to change all my usernames when I was going through my theater program, they were like, you got to make it your name. Michael Valdes was already taken, but once I put the T in the middle for my middle name, everything changed.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
that's it.
That's it.
But thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for supporting this season. This is my last guest of the season. You're going to get the season finale coming up next week with just me because I wanted it to start with me and end with me, but this is my final guest of the season and I could not be happier. Thank you, Ben, so much for being here and for sharing your time. And thank you guys for watching. You can find me at Hot Jewish Energy, at Hot Jewish Podcast, at Michael T. Valdes with an S at the end, and Hot Jewish Short King online. And that is it. Ben, is there anything else you'd like to say?
That's all. Just Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Today is Friday when we're filming, but thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.